totally changed my mind and decided I wanted to stand in the middle. So here it is. And I brought a pen just in case I want to write a sermon. Great. Hi, everybody. Oh, you're so responsive. That's good. My name is Sara-May Cologne. I'm the new youth pastor. It's in your bulletin, so it's real. I'm really excited to be here and honored. And, I've only been here a couple weeks, and you are truly an amazing church family. I was a little heartbroken about leaving my church home family back in Maryland because they've been my family in the U.S. since I moved here. So I was like, I don't know if there's a church that can ever replace that church family feeling. And man, you guys are threatening them. I'm going to send them a note and said they better send me care packages so I remember who they are. But that's for another time. Anyways, I'm really honored to be here, and I know it's only because Pastor Dan is gone, but hey, I'm here. So let's bow our heads together and pray. Dear God, thank you so much for your day. Thank you for the opportunity to come to you this Sabbath and just focus our eyes on you. And thank you for a family that can come together and just talk and be. And God, as I speak, help my words not to be my own, but to yours. Thank you so much. We love you in your name. Amen. So, as most of you know, the young adult program has been talking about universal majority. And I told the first service, I've never done 2 services in a row, by the way, with the same message. So I don't know if this is like a rerun. That was the practice. This is the real one. I don't know if that was the real one and this is just something. I don't know what's happening. But it's really cool because I can refer back to it. And it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. So in the first service, I was talking about universal majority, right? And the funny thing is when I heard the title, I totally translated it in my head as universal minority. And I was so confused on what that meant. And I probably sat for a good 20 to 30 minutes trying to figure out what on earth is universal minority. And that's cool because I'm probably part of it. But I didn't know what it meant. And then they cleared that up. And thanks to all of you that cleared that up rather rapidly. And so now we are back on track, universal majority. And when I was thinking about all this, I would like to share with you my train of thought, which I apologize for, but I have ADHD, so it may get a little crazy at times. But the reason I want to take you with me on this journey is because for me, it was a wake-up call for me. And I think that's what messages are supposed to be, right? They're supposed to be a wake-up call for the person. It's not about me saying some brilliant things so you guys can go home, pat yourselves on the shoulder, and be like, awesome day, woo. It's about a transforming moment, right? So when I was thinking about this, when I was a chaplain, I focused most of my life on the New Testament. Now, if that makes me a bad person, I apologize. But for me, the New Testament made so much sense to me because when I looked at the Old Testament, there were so many fun stories and so many interesting things, but it was hard for me to keep track of what was actually happening a lot of the time. So then in high school somewhere, I decided to focus all my attention on the New Testament, and my plan was if I live like Christ, then I'm good, right? Like I'll automatically be following the rules in the Old Testament, and I'll automatically be getting those beautiful things in the Old Testament that I can read, but I can put them into practice with the New Testament, right? So I had this whole thing, and so about 2 months ago, I was like, you know what's really horrible about this plan? is I'm forgetting the beauty of the Old Testament. So I started over. Started at Genesis 1:1. And the beginning was the beginning. Like all these things. And I start reading it over. And I was like, started skipping some stories because I've heard it 1,000 times, And I was like, no, go back. So I started at the beginning. So this week I got to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 1. And as I'm thinking about 1 Samuel 1 comes up, and the first story in it is Hannah. Hannah is standing in the temple of God, and she's saying, God, I'm barren, I'm useless, fix it. She's standing there brokenhearted because in that society, that's what life was. A woman was to give birth. She was to create a lineage. She was going to create a name, and for her, she needed a son. But she couldn't even have a son. She couldn't even have a daughter. She couldn't have anything. She was heartbroken. So there she stood before God, pleading. And Eli is watching her, as some of us do. What is this crazy woman doing? Standing there judging her a little bit because she looks a little insane. But when it comes down to it, he asked her, are you drunk? She was like, no. I'm begging to God because I truly believe that he's going to answer my prayer. And I truly believe that he's going to give me a son. And you know what? When he does, I will give him to him. So as I'm reading this, I'm like, Well done, Hannah. Give that son up, right? But then I started thinking about it. She gives birth to a son. She keeps him at home. She weans him. She holds him tight, because this is what she'd been praying for so long. And then when the time was right, when she had weaned him, she walked up to that temple, and she not only gave him over there for a couple hours a week to volunteer, to like clean pews or light candles or whatever they need, she gave her son, the one she had pleaded God for, to Eli and said, here, I promised you I'd give you my son to do God's work, and here he is. She left her son there. That freaked me out and blew my mind all at once. Because as I was traveling the country, I was remembering about a month and a half ago when I thought I was moving to Hawaii, and I was thinking that I had to give up my chinchillas. And that was a downer. I was like, oh, Optimus Prime, we have such a great relationship. Squishy, what am I going to do without you? You know, like, it was kind of torturous. I don't have kids, I have chinchillas. You know, and that was a horrible thought. I would have to give up this stupid squirrel-like fluffy thing to someone, and what would they do without me? And that was my genuine thought. That was my genuine concern. And as I'm driving across the country, I'm like, I'm ridiculous. I don't even know why I was thinking that. Like, these guys they're chewing through their cage. They obviously are trying to escape. They do not care. They do not care even a little bit about me. But as I was thinking about all this stuff, and I'm thinking about Hannah and her brokenness and her handing the one thing she'd been pleading for to God, she followed through with that promise. And so then that started me thinking, are we even capable of making ridiculous leaps of faith nowadays? Sometimes doing something illogical and crazy on the basis of faith, do we do that anymore? And then how do we justify this faith? And then my question was, do I have enough faith to give God all that I had promised him, or even just believe that miracles could happen in my life today? So there's so much life in this Bible, this book that we claim and base our lives off of. It shows epic visuals of God and how he knocked down entire cities with his mere presence. And then that moved my train of thought to, do I believe enough in God to stake my life on it? So I moved to 2 Kings 6:8. Which appears magically. I'm going to read it, so I'm sorry, because it's the Bible, and we're going to read it together, but also because I don't want to mess up the story, because I'm notorious for that. So, now the king of Aram was at war with Israel. After conferring with his officers, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place, which I always have to stop right there, because I find it hilarious that it says now the king of Aram was at war with Israel, and Israel wasn't at war with Aram. So, miscommunication there. And then also they were at such and such a place. What does that even mean? Anyways, okay, so they were at such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing that place because the Arameans are going down there. So the king of Israel checked on the place and indicated by the man of God. Time and again Elisha warned the king so that he was on his guard in such places. This enraged the king of Aram. He summoned his officers and demanded of them, will you not tell me which of us is on the side of the king of Israel? None of us, my lord the king, said one of the officers. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. Ooh. Go find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back, he's in Dothan. Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and surrounded the city. This is the part crazy. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh, my Lord, what shall we do? The servant asked. Don't be afraid, the prophet answered. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed, oh, Lord, open his eyes so he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. The story goes on. You can keep reading it some other time. But I got really stuck right there. Like, how crazy. Like, Elisha's just chilling. Oh, yeah. Tons of people here to kill me. That's great. And the servant's like, oh my word, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And he's like, Elisha, don't you know you're about to die? And I'm just like, hey God, do me a favor. Open this guy's eyes. And when the servant's eyes were opened, what did it say? there were chariots of fire all around protecting. That is some freaky business. How often do we think we are alone and yet there are blazing chariots surrounding us? How often do we think we are fighting a battle alone against all the powers of distraction, jealousy, finances, and anything else? But yet we're surrounded by an army of focus, love, and peace. How amazing and real is the God of the Bible? And that's when I got kind of stuck. Because for me, I was thinking, where's God? I'm sitting in my little cushy chair with my Bible, writing a sermon, and I'm like, I would like to tell an epic story. Where's God? And then I realized that I'm selfish because I constantly need something huge to happen in order for me to remember, like the Israelites, over and over again, that God is real and active. And so I started going through my life, and I started trying to process where it is that I saw God. Why do I believe what I believe? And, I should be a great, perfect pastor for you, and I will work on that. But honestly, we all struggle, right? We all have those days when we question things. And I'm that kid that my entire life, why is there stained glass in churches? I don't know. Why is there pews? I don't know. These are things I question on a regular basis. And so I have this question, and so I want to know, where was God in my life? Why do I believe? Why do I always end up still believing? And so I started rewinding, and I have the story of Elisha in my head. And then I realized there are so many moments in my life, but the one that trumped them all in this moment was a story from about, how many years ago? I was 10 or 11. We'll just go there. I was 10 or 11 years. Most of you guys know I was raised all over. I have no identity. I told the first service that if you want to stress me out beyond all belief, ask where I'm from, and I get anxiety. And I'm born, lived the longest, call home, where I live now, what do you want? So I was raised in several places, but I eventually ended up in Moscow, Russia. And we were called there right as the Iron Curtain went down. So right when the Iron Curtain went down, and we were like, let's go, woo, communism, right? So we get there. And let me explain a little bit of the society I lived in. We didn't have grocery stores. To tell you how little of a grocery store we had, let me tell you about how when I came to the US and they said, pick your favorite cereal, I started bawling because I was so overwhelmed. I didn't even know where the cereal was because there's 2 rows and it's all bright and shiny. But, that's the world I lived in. You'd have to wait in a line to see what's there. You'd have to wait in a line to pay for it. You'd have to wait in a line to pick it up and hope it's still there. If it's not there, you have to wait in a line to get your money back so that way you can wait in a line to see if what's there, and then you have to wait in a line to pay for it. You saying? It's like an 8-hour adventure to buy potatoes. So this is the world I live in. And this is the crazy kind of mindset that I had, that everything was a gift and everything was worth celebrating and everything was from God. And I remember looking at that and I remember thinking, okay, but there has to be more than that. I want a time where God was like, ta-da, here I am. I am here and I will dazzle you. And so I moved forward a little bit further. And there was this moment in Russia where we had a clinic. And if you guys have heard this story, good for you, because you probably know someone I know. We had a clinic, and that was our main thing. We had just rebuilt our division office. We had this clinic that we were trying to help people with dental work and medical issues, obviously, what clinics do. And 2 of my closest friends lived there, because there's only 6 missionary kids, so, that's where we hung out. And I always used to sneak out over there because there was nothing to do in the division office most of the time. So I remember there was a lot of drama going on. There was a lot of challenges with the clinic because, this sounds crazy, the mafia hated us. And yeah, I said mafia, that's real. And so the mafia would always try to get the clinic to shut down. Anything they could do. They would get the KGB on board and they would try to destroy the clinic. So they tried to shut it down legally. They would try to send spies into work for us. They would try to, I don't know, what they ended up doing was steal property. So they put these huge cement walls all the way around the clinic, trying to steal off the back of the property so that way they could build a clinic. This was their new business plan, okay? They were going to build a clinic. They were going to run us out of business, so therefore we had no reason to be there. It makes sense, actually, strangely enough. And so that's what they began to do. And, I had a really weird relationship with that because this was an ongoing thing. So I remember I used to sneak over there and play pranks on them, which don't do that, but that's a different story for another time. And so I always had this like weird relationship with the mafia, right? And the clinic was always just kind of on the edge of being safe. And I remember this one day, I was bored. I had finished my school, finished my work. I decided to go to the clinic. So I like took the metro and the bus all the way over to the clinic. And so I'm hanging out, playing, I think in the basement somewhere. And suddenly I feel the ground shaking. And now mind you, Moscow isn't like earthquake territory, like maybe here. So that's kind of unusual. So I remember I ran upstairs and I was like, what's happening? And as I'm running up the stairs, I look out the window and I see wrecking balls, bulldozers, pretty much everything you can think of being pulled up in front of the clinic. And I think, this can't be good. Probably not a good time to run outside. So I run up and find the doctor and his family, and I'm like sitting down with them, and they're like, well, we need to pray, as all these men, armed men, start surrounding the clinic. And so we kneel down, like any good Christian does, and we prayed. And at the end of the prayer, I open my eyes, and I look out, and the doctor's gone. I was like, where'd he go? So we look out the window. And as we look out the window, we see him walking. Okay, first, back up. He's like this tall, kind of bald, not the buffest guy you've ever seen. So, go back to story. He starts walking out towards the mafia and the KGB, right? Confident, just methodically walking out. And he even closes the gate behind him, which still, I remember that image is burned in my head forever. He closes the gate and he starts talking, right? And as he's talking, this other guy is yelling back at him. He's talking and talking, and then he's yelling back, and then he's talking. And the next thing I know, he like crosses his arms, says something, and just stands there. And suddenly the faces of all those men go ashen. And they start having these terrified, weird expressions. Like, and then they start running. Like, they start running. And I'm like, I don't know if you saw who your opponent is, but he's not like, you know, he's a doctor. Yet they all booked it. Like, they didn't even bother move the bulldozer. Like, they were gone. They were, like, running next door to their little high spot. And he's just, the doctor's standing there, and he's just, all right. So he, like, goes inside. He comes in, he's like, well, I think we should pray and thank God for whatever happened out there. And so we all kneel down, and we start praying. And as we say amen, no joke, the phone rings. And of course, he answers because he's the adult. And he's like, hello? What? What do you mean? No, we didn't know you were coming. Huh? And then the line goes dead. What had happened was the phone rang. The question was, how did you know we were coming? And then the next question was, where'd you get your army? I experienced Elisha, but I was blind. My eyes weren't open. I didn't see that. And as I was looking back through my life, I see all these epic moments where Christ was just like, bam, here you go. If I exist, here's a good example. And yet I move on through my life. I go into ministry. I do all these things. And there's still moments where I sit and question, do I have faith? And as we parallel these stories, and as I think back on this, I freak out a little bit. Because I wonder how the doctor felt at that moment. Did he feel alone? Or did he know that there was an army right behind him? And I wish I had asked him that question. And then I think, well, if I was around when Elisha was around, did he even see it? Or did he just know and want his servant to see it? And would it be easy to be a prophet if I could see all these angels and chariots and magical things happening around me all the time? Would it be easy then? Or is there just this element of faith? And then I go back to the original question. Are we capable of making ridiculous leaps of faith nowadays? How much of my life has passed by me since I heard and saw these breathtaking miracles? Do I let those phenomenal moments stay in the past, begging for God to show himself to me over and over, like the children of Israel? Or do I remind myself of how great our God is and know the universe shows up to my life? And I'm constantly surrounded by angelic hosts. So are we capable of making ridiculous leaps of faith? In Ephesians 6:12, it says, for we wrestle not against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. But then we're reminded in 1 John 4:4, you, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who's in the world. We are told that some of the most epic things we will wrestle with is not visible. So then my question is, why do we feel the need to see things? We're told over and over again in Scripture that it's going to be an invisible battle, that we're not going to know half of what's going on. But why is it that we constantly say, I want to see it, I want to know? Is that just humanity? Yeah, it is. Although then, at that moment, I get a text message and I think, haha, this is from my brother in Hawaii. And there are no wires connecting. This magical message has transferred over the ocean to me, and it's like, what's up? Look, a shark bird. Okay. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with these weird, mysterious modes of conversation, and I'm okay with faxes, which still freak me out actually a little bit, but I'm mostly okay with faxes. My printer, I don't even need a cord to connect it to my computer, and it prints in any room of the house. I can go stand in the bathroom and print something. It's pretty cool. And I'm okay with that. And we all seem okay with that. So why is it that we have such a hard time grasping who God is and his reality if we can't see him? Why is this something that we genuinely, as humans, struggle with? Why are we so blind and naive to live as if there is nothing happening without us knowing? There's an enemy and there is a God. We are surrounded by many things that we can't see, and we're weirdly comfortable with that. But miracles still happen, even today. But why is it that we need those epic, crazy moments? So then I thought, okay, what's a miracle that just happened to me? So I sat, and I can think of a lot of things, but then the one that really stuck out is the dorkiest of all, and it was the fact that when I was driving across the country, and I was getting to my new apartment that I had put my down payment on, so I was hoping would still be there when I got here, I wasn't going to have granite countertops. And I was a little bummed about that fact, because when I first got my apartment 6 years ago, my first one, I was like, wouldn't I feel like an adult if I had granite countertops, right? So I was like, God, hook me up. He sure did not, and he sure hasn't for 6 years. And I thought, well, that's over. So I get into my apartment that's unrenovated, so it's cheaper, and I walk in, and the first thing I see are granite countertops. And I slowly and awkwardly turned to Jason, the assistant manager, and I said, I'm not paying for that. And he said, yeah, I don't know what happened. We weren't supposed to renovate your apartment, and so we didn't renovate the whole thing, but the main manager was like, well, she's not here for another week, so just put granite countertops in there. And I burst out laughing in his face, because in my head, I remember that stupid, obnoxious, selfish Sarah prayer that was like, God, I'm gonna be an adult, give me granite countertops, And he hooked me up. 6 years late, but he totally remembered, and that blew my mind. So now I'm thinking, I had an Elisha moment, missed it, forgot about it, but it was there, and then I got granite countertops. Miracles exist. Conclusion, right? It's amazing. So I move on, and I'm thinking about this. So what is my faith really in? Because is it in something that I have to see, and it has to be proven? Or am I capable of making ridiculous leaps of faith without the seen? Do I believe good things will happen? Or do I believe because I genuinely believe it's true and I have a conviction about it? Or is it because I expect a result? I concluded that faith is not a transaction. Faith is an action. And when I got to that point, I thought of the story of Charles Blondin. I have no idea if I said his name right. He's the guy that decided it was a good idea to tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. Now, I can't walk if I had the whole room to myself smoothly out the door. You may watch me trip somewhere between here and that door. And I was thinking, this guy is like, let me show everyone how to walk on a rope across a bunch of waterfalls, and it will be a good idea. So he did this several times, though. This wasn't like a one-time stupid moment of okay, God, help me get across. It was like, let me try this again and again. He did it 8 times. And one of those times, he cooked an omelet on a little stove while he was walking. So this guy, just as a premise, is ridiculous. Okay, but the part of the story that blew my mind is when I was reading about Charles Blondin a couple years ago, he one time pushed a wheelbarrow across. And so picture this guy, picturing a wheelbarrow, right? Crossed on a rope, waterfalls, lots of death underneath. And he gets to the other side, and what happens? What's the crowd doing? They're automatically like, woo, yeah, awesome! And they're screaming and like, he's awesome. He made it across without dying. This is something to be celebrated. And so everyone's cheering, and then he says, I have a question. And so everyone goes, no question. So everyone goes silent. And he says, do you guys think I could push someone in this wheelbarrow across the waterfalls? And everyone's like, yeah, absolutely. You're amazing. You cooked an omelet, right? So everyone's cheering him on. And he was like, great. I need a volunteer. Guess how many people volunteered that day? A big zero. Okay, nobody was willing to get in that wheelbarrow. And how many times have they seen him go across the wire? How many ridiculous things has he done going across that wire? And how many of them truly had faith that he was able to do whatever he wanted on that wire? But when it came down to them getting in the wheelbarrow, they couldn't do it. So faith is not a transaction. Faith is an action. It requires a relationship with what you believe in. So when I go back to the story of Elisha, he saw the enemy, yet he looked for the army of God because he had a relationship. And there they were, surrounding him, splattered across the hilltops. It says there were horses and chariots of fire around the servant of the Lord. A wise woman, Ellen White, said, maybe, yeah. In all ages, angels have been near to Christ's faithful followers. The vast confederacy of evil is arrayed against all who would overcome. But Christ would have us look to the things which are not seen, to the armies of heaven encamped all about who love God to deliver them. From what dangers, seen and unseen, we have been preserved through the interposition of the angels, we shall never know until in the light of eternity we see the providences of God. Then we shall know that the whole family of heaven was interested in the family here below, and that messengers from the throne of God attended our steps from day to day. Are we even capable of taking ridiculous leaps of faith? John 14:6 answered my question. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So the answer to that question is, or not, but he is.